couple walking alone together in the dead of night. Their destination? The most expensive restaurant in town. A restaurant so exclusive, they've been waiting for over a year to get in. We join Cole and Carly on a night very much like this one, as they take a step into the creepy quadrant.
Carly and Cole walked down the wet sidewalk, through the darkening night. On every fifth step, and for the subsequent 3, their faces were lit orange from the overhead street lamps set at intervals along State Street. Their stride was perfectly aligned, which was typical. They had been together for 3 years, and had understood each other on an unspoken level from the very beginning of their relationship. This was the night they had been waiting for. The night that was almost 2 years in the making. They were on their way to the most exclusive restaurant in the city, Heather Harmony's.
You really do look amazing tonight.
Carly rolled her eyes. This was the 3rd time Cole had made the same statement.
Yup. Had to step up my game. Match your level of sexy excellence. Sexcellence, if you will.
Cole smiled sideways at her. Though they had another 1.5 miles to walk, she was in heels and his shoes were incredibly tight. They were walking on clouds. Nothing could ruin this night. The thing about Heather Harmony's is not the exclusivity alone. It's that you really have no control over when you get in. No amount of money or influence will get you a table. All you can do is put your name down and wait. Their number had finally come up. Their Heather Harmony's lottery had granted them the privilege of one night of beautiful atmosphere and wonderful food. They knew that their neighbors and co-workers would be just as envious of them as they had been of all the others who got in before them. And that was half the fun. The city streets had been eerily quiet. But they began to notice the sweet sounds of a solo violinist playing a gentle tune that seemed to carry them onward. Cole did a little spin, as if he was about to dance down the street, then gestured at Carly, who shimmied her knees in an odd sort of jig. They laughed together as they approached the musician. He was sitting directly on the street, his violin scratched and worn, his face lined and dirty. Beside him was a dented tin can. His small eyes followed them as they passed. His tin can remained empty. The night was oddly warm. Lucky for Cole and Carly, it had not truly rained. The steady falling mist had wet the sidewalk, causing the smells of the city to drop away and awakening the subtle smells of the grass that was waiting to grow out of the cracks in the sidewalk. The figure of a well-dressed woman was quickly approaching through the darkness. Her skirt swished back and forth as she walked. Cole and Carly continued on, moving towards their goal, but the woman stopped them.
Hey, sorry. I'm looking for my fiancé. It's a special night, and he was supposed to meet me, but I haven't seen him. Tall, dark hair, and wearing a suit.
Oh, we haven't seen anyone, really.
Carly regretted this as soon as she had said it. They were walking alone in the dark in the middle of the city. What if this woman was some sort of scout, trying to decide if they'd be an easy mark? It's never a good idea to admit you're alone. But no, she was being too nervous. It was something about the woman's eyes. She never seemed to focus entirely on any one thing. She didn't make eye contact when she spoke to them. Something about her seemed far away.
Thanks anyway.
She turned to go. Cole's eyes widened and Carly stifled a laugh. Her dress was tucked into her forest green underwear, leaving a fourth of a butt cheek in full view. "Should we tell her?" Cole asked with a silent glance. Carly shook her head. Too messy. So they continued on their way down State Street. It wasn't long before they heard voices. Odd that these streets had been so quiet, so desolate when they began their walk. A well-lit alley across the street. Centered in it, as perfectly as if the scene was a part of a stage play, was a man holding a long knife. Backed against the wall of the alley was a second man, larger than the first, but certainly not armed with a knife. Cole and Carly's steps stalled as they watched the scene unfold. Should they do something, or should they interfere? Cole put his hand on Carly's shoulder and nudged her forward.
Let's go, before he sees us. There's nothing we could do anyway.
Just before the man cowering against the wall fell out of Carly's line of vision, she was almost sure she saw him smile. Cole and Carly were shaken. It had never occurred to them that they could become the victims of a mugging on their way to the fanciest restaurant in the city. Carly cracked her knuckles and squeezed one fist into the other, then shook her arms out, trying to rid herself of the nervous shaking that had taken over her body. Cole knew better than to comfort her, or maybe he was just too shaken himself. Still, nothing could ruin their night. Carly took in a deep breath, letting the night air fill her lungs and calm her. The mist had settled down upon State Street like a blanket, causing the yellow tone of the streetlights to diffuse everything into a soft version of itself. She kissed his cheek.
Cole, we're gonna eat so much food.
She was hoping that she could coax him into a jolly mood, and that this, in turn, would bring her good mood back as well.
I'm gonna get the most expensive fish they have.
Yeah, you are.
His response seemed just as intentional as her comment had been. Nothing will ruin their night. Not street crime, not pushy women with their butts out.
And I'm gonna drink so much scotch the food'll taste twice as good.
Ooh, we're gonna be in heaven.
She bumped him playfully with her hips, and they walked on through the thickening yellow mist. Cole and Carly held hands, swinging their arms to and fro to the beat of their stride.
Wait, what was that?
Neither of them breathed. And a small figure emerged. A young girl, with sticks in her hair, disentangled herself from the brush. She cupped her hands around her mouth to amplify her voice, craned her head back as far as it would go.
Brutus!
When there was no response to her call, she walked towards Carly and Cole, self-assured, as if a small girl wandering around in the city at night by herself and approaching strangers was quite normal. She explained that her dog was missing, her tone somewhat playful. Upset, but playful. Something about it set Cole's arm hair on end. As if she was talking about some kind of game. She assured him that Bruce was quite real.
Please, help me find him.
Carly had had enough. If they didn't move now, they would miss their reservation. They had waited too long to let that happen. They deserved their night at HH. They continued through the haze. One more block and they've made it. The shining white lights of Heather Harmony's cut lines through the yellow fog. Cole and Carly allowed themselves an undignified moment of jumping up and down, hand in hand, before collecting their cool and heading for the entrance. They checked for cars before crossing the street. Well, they hadn't seen a single vehicle all night. They had finally made it to HH after so many years. It felt as though all the everyday worries that normally weighed them down and held them back were somehow removed. Somewhere else. They stepped inside, and the doors shut behind them. Warm and inviting. They couldn't stop smiling. The hostess brought them to their table and handed them menus printed on thick, creamy white paper. Everything was perfectly extravagant. It was everything they had imagined for so long. They looked around the comfortable restaurant, taking a moment to appreciate the atmosphere before deciding what they'd order during this once-in-a-lifetime experience. Cole was eyeing the gigantic steak that had just been served at the next table. Carly noticed something at the table opposite. A small girl with twigs stuck in her hair. The man who'd ordered the steak began cutting it apart with a long, sharp knife. And Cole realized he had seen this man before. Carly and Cole both turned to see a man in a fancy suit and hat, playing a violin. His face was lined, his eyes dark, and the violin stained with blood. Carly and Cole shared a look, and this time they were not sure what the other one was saying because they were not sure what they needed to say themselves. And the waitress approached the table. It was the woman who had been looking for her fiancé just a few blocks away. She asked what they'd like to start with, and when they looked down at their crisp white menus, it was not food they were being offered.
A series of wrong decisions. A rather straight sidewalk that twists and turns its way into eternity. Expecting a good meal, Carly and Cole have instead been served a fresh plate of consequences, to be digested eternally in the creepy quadrant.